The 22nd floor of Baxter & Cole Enterprises buzzed with the usual rhythm of corporate life: ringing phones, hurried footsteps, and the relentless tapping of keyboards. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, bouncing off polished desks and steel partitions. Among the workers sat Naomi Carter, a 29-year-old black woman whose presence was both graceful and quietly powerful. She was dressed immaculately, her dark skin glowing against the cream blouse and navy skirt she wore. She was sharp, precise, and efficient, qualities that should have earned her respect. But in this office, respect wasn't something Naomi was given easily, because above her stood Richard Hale, the regional manager, a man with thinning blonde hair, pale eyes, and a constant sneer etched across his face. He had a reputation for being cruel, but when it came to Naomi, his cruelty took on an uglier shade. He questioned her intelligence, mocked her appearance, and treated her as if she didn't belong. His prejudice wasn't hidden. It seeped into every word, every glare, every mistake he blew out of proportion. Naomi had endured it in silence. She couldn't afford to lose her job, and she didn't want pity from anyone. What nobody in the office knew was that Naomi wasn't just another assistant. She was the wife of Marcus Carter, the CEO himself. But Naomi had chosen to keep her identity private. She didn't want whispers of favoritism or doors opening for her just because of her husband's title. She wanted to prove herself. So she worked twice as hard, swallowed insults twice as bitter, and held her head high despite Richard's constant attempts to break her spirit. That morning, a big client meeting was scheduled. Naomi was in charge of preparing the boardroom. She arranged notepads, lined up glasses, and brought in pitchers of fresh water. As she returned with one, her heel snagged slightly on the carpet, sending a few drops splashing onto the table. It was nothing, just a few droplets. She reached for napkins to clean it. But Richard saw. And Richard never missed a chance to turn something small into a spectacle, especially when it came to her. "Naomi!" Richard's voice boomed across the office. Heads lifted from screens, conversations died mid-sentence. Naomi froze, napkin in hand. Richard stalked over, his lips curled in disgust. "Do you people not know how to handle something as simple as pouring water? Unbelievable!" The words cut sharp. You people. Everyone knew what he meant, but no one dared speak it. Naomi tried to answer calmly. "I'll clean it immediately." But Richard wasn't interested in calm. He snatched the glass pitcher from her hands, holding it high for all to see. Then, deliberately, cruelly, he tipped it forward. The icy water poured over Naomi's cream blouse, soaking the thin fabric, dripping down her skirt, chilling her skin. Gasps erupted across the office. Some employees stared in horror. Others quickly looked away, pretending not to see. A few exchanged nervous, guilty glances, too afraid to intervene. Richard smirked. "Maybe cold water will cool down those clumsy hands. Honestly, this is why we keep falling behind. Some people just aren't cut out for professional spaces." The words dripped venom. The implication was clear. Her skin, her color, her very existence didn't belong here. Naomi stood trembling, her clothes plastered to her body, her dignity stripped away in front of dozens of watching eyes. The office air was suddenly heavy, thick with the silence of people who chose safety over justice. Her chest rose and fell as she fought the urge to cry. She thought of her mother's voice, "Never let them see you broken." So she straightened her back, though her hands shook at her sides. Richard leaned closer, sneering, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Clean yourself up. You're making this place look unprofessional." The cruelty in his tone made her skin burn hotter than the water itself. He wasn't just mocking her mistake. He was mocking her color, her place in this office, her very worth. And then, unbeknownst to Richard, the humiliation he had orchestrated had been witnessed. The glass doors of the executive elevator slid open with a soft chime. Out stepped Marcus Carter, CEO of Baxter & Cole, his towering presence commanding instant respect. Dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his deep mocha skin and sharp features radiated authority. The office hushed. Employees straightened in their seats, whispers spreading. Marcus rarely came to this floor, but his eyes were already fixed on Naomi, his wife, his partner, the woman he loved, standing drenched, humiliated, yet unbowed. A storm brewed behind his calm expression. His fists clenched at his sides, though he forced his face to remain unreadable. He wanted to see how far this would go. He wanted to see Richard's arrogance in full display before delivering justice. Richard, oblivious to the fire he had just lit, adjusted his tie and smirked, ready to impress the CEO with his discipline. But Marcus's silence was deadly. His gaze was locked on Naomi, then on Richard. Richard had no idea. He hadn't just poured water on an employee. He had poured water on the wife of the most powerful man in the building. And the clock had already started ticking on his downfall. The air in the office thickened the moment Marcus Carter stepped onto the floor. His presence was magnetic, sharp eyes that missed nothing, an aura of power that made even the boldest employees nervous. Conversations that had begun again after Naomi's humiliation died instantly. But Richard Hale, blinded by his own arrogance, didn't see the storm brewing. To him, Marcus was just another executive walking through. He had no idea that this was the man who owned the very chair Richard sat on, the man whose decisions decided the fates of everyone in this company. Naomi stood frozen, water dripping from her blouse, shivering from both the cold and the sting of shame. She dared not meet Marcus's eyes. She knew her husband well. His silence was more dangerous than his words. "Mr. Carter," Richard boomed, his voice full of fake cheer as he hurried across the floor. "What an honor to see you here, sir. If only you'd given us notice, I'd have made sure everything was perfect." He gestured widely, ignoring the fact that Naomi was still standing drenched just a few feet away. Marcus's expression remained unreadable. "I prefer surprise visits. They tell me more than scheduled ones." His voice was calm, but there was a chill to it, like ice stretched thin over fire. Richard laughed nervously, mistaking the tone for casual banter. Of course, and rest assured, we run a tight ship here. Discipline is key. In fact," he turned slightly, eyes narrowing on Naomi. "I was just handling a situation of carelessness. Some employees, unfortunately, can't seem to keep up with professional standards." He let the words hang, his gaze lingering on Naomi's skin, his lips curling in a way that made his prejudice undeniable. Several employees shifted uncomfortably, but none spoke. The power dynamic was clear. Richard ruled this floor with fear, and no one wanted to be his next target. Marcus's jaw tightened. He had built this company with the belief that talent, hard work, and respect could thrive together. Yet here, in his own office, he was witnessing the rot of racism eating away at his vision. His eyes moved from Richard to the staff, every silent witness, every bowed head. Their silence wasn't loyalty to Richard. It was fear. And fear had allowed a man like Richard to humiliate his wife unchecked. Naomi, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, finally raised her head and met Marcus's gaze. For a split second, a message passed silently between them. Not yet. Letting show his full hand. Marcus gave the faintest nod. Determined to flaunt his authority, Richard gestured toward Naomi again. Take her, for example. Always making small mistakes. Always distracted. And you know how it is, Mr. Carter. When you lower the bar for one person, especially. He hesitated, his voice dropping with venom. Especially when they come from backgrounds that don't exactly fit here. It drags everyone else down. It was blatant now. A racist jab dressed in corporate language. Naomi's hands clenched at her sides. A few employees exchanged horrified looks, but still no one spoke. The fear of losing their jobs outweighed their conscience. Richard chuckled smugly, trying to impress Marcus further. But don't worry, sir. I keep things in line. I won't let people like her tarnish the company's reputation. The silence that followed was suffocating. Richard thought he had scored points. He had no idea he had just sealed his fate. Marcus finally spoke, his voice low, steady, but laced with controlled rage. People like her? Richard straightened, missing the danger. Exactly. I mean, look at her. Clumsy, out of place, always trying too hard. This isn't the environment for charity cases. Gasps spread across the office. Naomi's breath caught in her throat. Marcus's expression hardened like stone. He stepped closer to Richard, his towering frame casting a shadow over the manager. For the first time, Richard faltered, sensing something wasn't right. Marcus's tone was sharp now, his words cutting through the silence. And tell me, Richard, who gave you the authority to decide who belongs in this company? Who gave you the right to pour ice water on an employee, to publicly humiliate her, to make her skin color the subject of your mockery? Richard stammered, his confidence slipping. Well, I was just enforcing discipline. You know how it is. Some of them. Marcus's voice thundered, shaking the air. Some of them. The entire office froze. For the first time, Richard's face drained of color. He realized this wasn't casual. This wasn't small talk. Something was terribly wrong. Marcus turned slightly, his eyes sweeping over the staff. All of you, you watched, you heard, and you said nothing. This is the culture you've allowed to grow here. A culture of silence, of fear, of prejudice. The employees shifted, shame painting their faces. No one dared meet his eyes. Then Marcus's gaze landed back on Naomi. His voice softened, but only slightly. And Naomi, she endured it, day after day. She let herself be treated like this because she didn't want anyone to think she had an advantage, because she wanted to prove herself on her own. Richard blinked, confusion spreading. Wait, Naomi? Marcus stepped closer, his voice now a quiet storm. Yes, Richard, Naomi Carter, my wife. The words landed like a bomb. Gasps, whispers, stunned silence filled the office. Richard staggered back, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. His eyes darted between Marcus and Naomi, realization dawning in horror. The woman he had just humiliated in the cruelest, most racist way possible was the CEO's wife. And the CEO was standing right in front of him. Fury simmering like a volcano ready to erupt. The office was frozen. No keyboard clicks, no ringing phones, just the deafening silence of shock. Dozens of employees stared wide-eyed at Naomi, the soaked assistant they had pitied moments ago, now revealed as the wife of the man who signs their paychecks. Richard Hale's face turned ghostly pale, his arrogance drained away, leaving behind a trembling shell. He had just mocked, degraded, and humiliated the wife of his boss, the CEO. "Your wife?" he stammered, voice cracking. Marcus Carter didn't blink. His voice was low, dangerous. "Yes, my wife, the woman you poured ice water on. The woman you humiliated in front of everyone. The woman you reduced to nothing because of the color of her skin." The weight of every word slammed into Richard. Marcus turned his gaze on the office staff, his eyes blazing. "And all of you, you watched. You sat in silence while a black woman was degraded right in front of you. Not one of you had the courage to say a word. Do you think silence makes you innocent? No. Silence makes you complicit." A few employees shifted, shame coloring their faces. Some looked down, unable to meet his eyes. Marcus stepped closer to Richard, his towering frame casting him in shadow. His voice rose like thunder. "You poured water on her like she was trash. You called her clumsy. You said people like her didn't belong here. Do you know who doesn't belong here, Richard? A racist like you." Richard's mouth quivered. "Mr. Carter, please, Marcus cut him off. "Save it. You're done here. Effective immediately. You're terminated. Security will escort you out." Gasps erupted. The office trembled with the sudden downfall of its tyrant. Richard's mask cracked completely. He dropped the fake authority and replaced it with desperation. "Please, sir, I didn't know. If I'd known she was your wife, I would have—" Marcus's voice was sharp as a blade. "That's the problem. You shouldn't have to know she's my wife to treat her with respect. Every employee here deserves dignity, no matter their skin color, no matter where they come from. But you thought cruelty was leadership. You thought racism was power." Richard's knees buckled slightly. Sweat rolled down his temple. His empire of fear had collapsed in seconds. 2 security guards appeared, standing firmly behind him. "Get him out of my building," Marcus commanded. The guards took Richard by the arms. His pleas echoed pathetically as he was dragged through the office. "Please, I didn't mean it. It was just a joke. Please." But no one laughed. No one moved to defend him. The office that once trembled under his voice now looked at him with disgust. As Richard disappeared, Marcus turned back to Naomi. His gaze softened, though his voice still carried power. "Naomi," he said gently. She stood tall, even in her soaked clothes. Her pride, her strength, things Richard tried to strip away, shone brighter than ever. Tears shimmered in her eyes, not from weakness, but from the overwhelming rush of justice. Marcus continued, his voice loud enough for all to hear. "You endured humiliation with grace. You worked harder than anyone here, and you did it without ever using my name. You wanted to prove yourself on your own, and you did." Naomi's breath hitched. Her husband wasn't just defending her. He was honoring her. Marcus turned to the staff. "From this day forward, Naomi will take on a leadership role in this company. And let me make this clear. Racism, discrimination, and cruelty have no place here. Anyone who thinks otherwise can leave with Richard." The office filled with murmurs. Employees nodded. Some clapped quietly. Others looked at Naomi with new respect. The silence that once protected Richard was broken. Marcus's voice lowered, heavy with finality. A company is more than profits and contracts. It's about people. And if you can't respect people, All people. You don't deserve a place here. Richard thought he was powerful because of his title. But true power comes from how you treat others. That's the legacy we'll build here. Naomi's heart swelled. For the first time in months, she felt seen. Not just as the CEO's wife, but as herself. Strong, resilient, victorious. Marcus placed his arm gently around her shoulders. No one pours water on my wife. No one pours water on any of my employees. Not in my company. The office erupted in applause. Not forced, but genuine. The fear Richard had built was gone. In its place grew something new. Hope, respect, and the beginning of a culture where silence would no longer shield injustice. As Marcus and Naomi walked toward the elevator together, Naomi felt a wave of pride. She had endured cruelty, but in the end, justice had spoken louder. The elevator doors slid shut behind them, sealing the moment. And in the silence that followed, one truth lingered in every mind on that floor. Racism will always be exposed, and justice will always find its way.